live, so we can carry on. So, Sonny, we have not seen Jason in a while.
Long time, man.
Yeah. So, actually, I was talking to Jason for. I think the conversation is going to be pretty chill because we were talking about stuff prior to. We were talking about actually some of the young bucks in the gym and how they're ego lifting, and
I think we
how
did
I
it.
and how I was like, man, I would really want to go up to this person and be like, hey man, don't hurt yourself. Just lower the weight a little bit. And Juggy always says like, yo, Army guy would have told him, right? And Juggy refers to you as Army guy because for those of you guys that don't know, Jason used to walk in with camel pants, work boots, but they would look like literally like on duty, like you were suited. And the reason why that always hits home. So I wanted to start this off with our first interaction together. Do you remember that, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, one of them definitely. Yeah.
So the first interaction we had was I was probably about 2.5 to 3 years in working out at Optimum. Sonny, you remember Luck Uncle? Luck Uncle gave us the program. So I was doing, 14 sets of squats or whatever. But at that point, I think I was doing about 3 plates and I was feeling really good about myself because I was like, oh, I'm lifting this heavy weight. And it was when I finished the workout and Jason comes up to me and he's like, how about you go lower than a foot when you do that squat? Because you're not really getting much out of it. And maybe try to take some weight off. And I was just like, fuck this guy. Right? Like I was so pissed, right?
Yeah.
But my ego wouldn't let me reduce the weight. So I will be honest enough to admit that I kept the weight, but I kept the weight exactly the same for a full year. And I just kept trying to go lower and lower and lower until one day you actually came by. You're like, oh, you took my advice, right? You kind of mentioned it. You're like, now it looks pretty good. And then that's when I told you too. And I'm like, you know what? When you said that, I told him the whole story, like how it went down and how I was like, F you. But then I thanked him afterwards. And then that's when the bromance began.
I think, you know what? I mean, I know what it's like if someone tells you, hey, you know what? You're doing that wrong. So I've always told people or tried to say, you might want to. Oh, there we go. You're back on.
Sorry.
He knocked his phone up.
Yeah.
No, I have a Surface laptop thing. So it's like the one that has the tablet with the screen.
Also, it can fall back.
The
Okay.
stand is called that.
Okay. So I've always tried to be like, I'm not saying what you're doing is wrong, but why don't you try it this way? And if you like the way I'm showing you, then keep that. And if you want to go back to your original way, but let me know how it feels.
Yeah.
And normally that I'll watch someone do what I've instructed or given them the advice to do. And I'll ask them afterwards, how did that feel? Did you feel it more in your chest? If you're doing bench press or flies, oh my God, it feels totally different. And I said, okay, well, that's good. And there's always, I've never had a bad experience yet because I've always said, you have the choice. You do it your way, or you can do it the way I'm showing you. And if it doesn't work for you, don't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
The approach is key. I think you didn't come at it from a very authoritative position. No. It was more of like, hey, try it this way. Like it was always like all in good spirits for sure.
Yep.
But when you're talking to a young 20-year-old,
oh, I get it.
Who's pumped, filled, testosterone sky high. He's got this new program from this guy that's like his idol. That's like, and so I remember, and you know what? It probably saved me from a catastrophic injury in the future, because had I continued and gone on with that trajectory, it probably would have been 5 plates, 1 foot squat, then the knee blows out, hip blows out, and next thing you know, like I can't even lift anymore. So, I mean, to you, it's more just like, hey, I just gave him a suggestion. But a lot of the time, like people that have been doing this for a long time realize like, holy shit, if I hadn't gotten that advice at the time that I did, I probably would not be lifting anymore. And we've seen it in the times, even at Optimum at the old location, how many people come and go.
Oh, it's huge. And sorry to cut you off, but
no, all good.
Especially with the younger guys, they're 18, they're 19, and then they want to jump on some steroids, and suddenly they're doing weights more than their friends. And it's just a matter of time before something goes, and then they're gone. You know, oh, my shoulder's gone, or my back's gone, or my knee's gone. Then you see them again, and they're like, what happened to you, right? So, you know, so everybody, the number one thing is everybody wants things quickly.
Yeah. Instant gratification.
Yeah.
So, Sonny, what was your first interaction with Jay?
I think it was along those lines where it was like, hey, man, when you're doing those bent over rows, you might want to use your back and not your arm.
You're freezing again, bro.
He's blowing me a kiss.
I understood where he was coming from, but trying to explain it to you, like, hey, Jason just said we should do this. He's like, all right. And then I go up to him like, hey, man, because I used to do, remember that phase we went through where I started reading up a lot about if it fits your macros, train properly, slow, controlled stuff. I'm like, yo, we should try this or that. I was like, all mind to muscle connection. Every conversation we had, you'd walk up to me and be like, who's huge and who's not? Like, oh shit, all right, just shut up and just do the thing, right? But like, looking back at like how we're trained now, like it's crazy. There's a huge difference. I mean, with Jason, it was almost just advice. It wasn't ever like, it was, you'd come by if you're doing a good form, you're doing something good, he'd be like, hey man, that was good form. But if it was like something bad, it was never in an intentional way. It was just like, hey. And I never took it wrong, but I know for sure how some people can for sure take that wrong, right? Like,
yeah,
I think we all did that in a way at Optimum. Like, I think we were like that core circle of people that whenever we saw someone doing something really bad or dangerous, we would go out of our ways to kind of stop that. Because I mean, myself, I tore my shoulder, right? Yeah. So we've been there, done that. We've had those injuries. But hey, man, I've done it. It's up to you if you want to do it too. But I'm trying to save you from it, right?
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead, Jay.
I was going to say, you know, like once you're in that hole that you hurt your shoulder, and mine's still not good, and it will probably never be good. You have to train, you have to be cognitive of that no matter what you're doing. You're doing curls, you're doing chest, of course, you know, you're doing anything, you're engaging your shoulder or your joint, and you have to be aware of that, and it sucks. You know,
that injury changed me for life, man. Like, it's more of the mental battle days too, right? Like,
yeah.
But it's oddly enough, I was having days where even up until now, if I'm doing chest, doing a push day, my chest would get so tight, shoulders would feel like they're frozen.
Yeah.
But I've been doing push-ups every morning.
It helps.
And every night. It just like, not like to like failure or anything, just going through the motion. Yeah. And then days where I'm feeling kind of flat, I've been doing just push-ups. Dude, my shoulder health has gotten so much better. And I couldn't even do push-ups like about a year ago, just because the pain in this was so bad that when I come down, I would just collapse. But I started off my knees again, like call it what you want to call it. I never did it at the gym. I never want to be called.
So you want us to call them girl push-ups before?
Yeah, like I never did them at the gym that way. I was like, fuck that. But like at home, I was doing them, and then like now I can rock them out, right? But but then I read up on stuff, and like doing those body weight movements really helps the joints function, because when you're just grabbing the weight, it's the weight coming down. It's not technically the joint, right? Like,
you know, if you look back, Jason used to do a lot of that. You would do the dips, you would do the weighted pull-ups, you know, you would do the push-ups. I remember you would use those handles and throwing those push-ups from time to time. You were more cognizant of pressing because your shoulders. You said the shoulder injuries, you had to be mindful, but you had a period of time where you wanted to get up to 315 on bench press. The strength was always there. It was just more of the body hold. So I learned a lot of that early, because, you know, to be completely honest, you would have to have some sort of buy-in with me for me to actually listen to you, right? It would be one of those things where I was hard-headed. And so when I would hear you say something and maybe somebody else would give me identical advice, the weight of your words would be more. It'd be like, all right, that's like the Yoda in the gym. I'm going to listen to him. If you came up to me and said, don't squat today, I'd be like, all right, fine, I'll consider it. I'll go do Smith squat or something, right? Because there's something you're seeing, even little tips that people are like, that makes no sense. Like wearing work boots when you squat helps with your positioning, you know? Those things. My brother does it to this day. Juggy still does it. Really? He brings in his work boots and he squats in them. And he's a lot leaner now.
Yeah.
He's more about just keeping his body healthy, but those little things are going to carry on. So it's cool to see that, like, you know, you're not in the gym anymore at Optimum, but there's those little things, you know. Even when I do incline flies, I think about the conversations we had about, you know, how many other people are doing 95 to 100-pound incline flies, you know.
Yeah.
But okay, we could definitely go down this path. It'd be like 3 hours of this. So the podcast is more about, we want people to get you to know you better. It's also a selfish reason for myself and Sunny to actually have a conversation with you, because it's been years now where we've actually had a face-to-face kind of, you know, conversation type of thing. So before we go off on all the gym stuff,
right,
I've never talked to you about your early beginnings, where you were born, you know, how was life there? You know, we talked a bit about you. Were you not born in the UK?
So I'm just going to turn my phone off, because that would be terrible if it went off. So my mom is from here, and she's from you know, German background. My great grandparents came over from Germany many years ago, and my dad was from England, and so he wanted to get out of England in the late '60s. Came here and met my mom at a party, and 3 months later that they were married. So that's that. And to kind of fill in a bit of where you're going with this, I've lived both here and in England, in the southern England, and for about 15 years in total. So both are great places. I'm very lucky to have lived there.
Where in England exactly were you? Like the town or the city?
The nearest, so it's like here that you have like a province, and over there it's called a county. So
Okay.
I was near Kent.
Okay.
And Kent would be a bit like they grow fruit there, apples and stuff. So it's like one of the in the south, it's quite a bit warmer than northern England.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And kind of, what, like, at what stage were you living in England? Was that the early days, or was it kind of like, you know, what's the time frame there?
So both. So, you know, I mean, the longest time was from 1980 to 1990, because my parents wanted me. So that was the age of 10 until 20. Because my parents wanted me to do my education in one place. And yeah.
So then you hopped on over at 20 to Canada. Is that correct?
Yeah. So in 1990, that my dad found out that he had a brain tumor, you know, cancer, and it was terminal. So we stayed in England until he passed away from that, and then my mom and I, it's just my mom and I, and so we moved back here. Yeah.
Okay. So, personal question.
Yeah.
So you lost your father in the 20s? You're in your 20s around that time?
I was 20, and he was 45.
Did that impact you in any way in terms of your development? You losing your father, like, kind of, I mean, you're grown at that stage, but did that negatively impact you in any way, or did it positively impact you, as in you're like, all right, time for me to kind of step up and kind of fill the shoes?
Okay, so you kind of hit on a few things. So number one, I will say, yes, it was time for me to man up. I had an amazing father who did everything for us. And I guess, I don't want to say I was spoiled, but if my car broke down, dad would fix it. If I needed, you know, whatever. So when he passed away, then it was me who had to take care of everything else, right? And he, you know, I mean, my mom was, you know, she was very strong. But your other answer, another question, so I've been training since I was 13, and I had done some judo and some karate and some boxing. The boxing I enjoyed the most. But it made me more of an angry young man. And that wasn't always the best path, you know, but in England, life is a bit different than here, and it was a different era. So, you know,
It was rough over there. So that means, if I'm not mistaken, Dorian Yates and yourself are like close in age, right? I could be, because he talks about that time being some pretty rough stuff. So he lived on oh man, it was one of those estates where it's like housing estates for.
So it's called a council. It's called council house. So it is a government housing. And I've explained to my wife that quite often in England, you may have towers, like apartment towers, and they may have a pub there. If you're an outsider, you don't go in there. You don't. Like, it's just no. So they can be quite, but where I lived, it wasn't rough. I don't want to, I'm just saying that there was lots of action, and it wasn't something that at school, if there were fights at school, it wasn't like today, right? And it was just a different era. But where I lived, it was not rough at all. But there are some very rough areas of England and tough people. So
I can agree with that, man. I've heard a lot of stories from people that are like a generation ahead, you could say, of myself and Sonny. Right. And when you hear some of the stories about back in England, it was a different time. There's some hard people that come from there too. I think people kind of skip on that. They think like, oh, the Russian guys, they're hard people, but there are some crazy times back in the day. So 20, you move over to Canada. How is life when you first move over? Where are you living? What are you doing for work? Like, filling those shoes, kind of, where do you go from there?
Okay, so after school had finished, which I was 17, that's when and then I went to art school for 3 years. And then when we moved here, my mom's family are from Surrey and that area. So we lived with my aunt for a bit. And then my mom bought an apartment in Newton. Then I started to train at the Newton Wave Pool back in the day, right?
Yeah, still alive.
Yeah. And then from there, I thought, okay, I've outgrown this. Then I went to Gators gym, which was like the mecca, right? I mean, I loved that gym, right? Yep. Sweat, blood, tears, puke, everything, just a hardcore gym. And I wasn't really, it wasn't until a little bit later that I got into flooring. So there were different jobs that I did. And probably 23, I started to work in a few clubs on the door. So that was interesting, some life skills. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard some of the stories from there. We used to have our chats, in between sets sometimes about some of the things that go down. And so what got you to, so first of all, with Gators, they had some phenomenal gear, like the oversized stuff. Like I was always like, oh, I got to get myself a pair, but never made it out to there. What brought you into finally to Optimum Fitness? Because that was a gym where we all met.
Well, I had trained at the old gym before, right? Were you ever at the warehouse?
Yep.
Okay, so that to me was very similar to, and I believe the men that owned it originally, his name was Sonny, and I can't remember the other.
I think it's Harbier or her something.
Yeah. And so those guys, it was just a great gym, on like a warehouse. It had the same feeling as Gators, and Gators by then had changed to the garage. I believe it was called the garage then. And so, that's, it was great. And that's where I met my friend Nav, the dentist. And so I started to work out with him. And at that point, yes, I was wearing my camo pants.
Yeah, so that, I remember that's probably as far back as in the early 2000s that I started. So I started, my first day that I stepped into Optimum was 2003, but I didn't sign up till about a year later, until my dad was like, all right, because back then I didn't even have my license. It was all about getting from North Delta to Optimum Fitness to lift weights, right?
Yeah.
And I remember you from then, and I'm sure you were there prior to me even showing up too, right? So that's where we all met. That's where it all started. So how long have you been lifting weights for? So you're 13 to now. How many years of experience do you have under the iron?
Well, over 35. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's some things that right now I read a lot of research, right? I read at least one study a day, and that's just to kind of keep up as a coach and understand what's going on. And what I'm going to be completely honest about is a lot of the studies are just proving what people have been doing since the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. You have people that, from the golden era, you can call it the silver era, the bronze era, or whatever you want to call them. From I always was reminded of Bill Pearl when you talked about being a vegetarian.
Okay. Yeah.
And bodybuilding. It would always bring me back to Bill Pearl, even though, mind you, he spent a good portion of his career eating meat, building his body. Excuse me. And then he became a lacto-ovo vegetarian. We've had these conversations about, he talked to the Seventh-day Adventist, that was his friend, and he learned about the diet and he changed everything. So the unique thing is, like, I remember how big and strong you were. We would go basically toe to toe when it would come to certain lifts. I had to actually build up to that point. You had already been doing it for years prior to, and then you drop the bomb like, yeah, I'm a vegetarian. Right. So what kind of, why did you go down that route? What was the reason behind becoming a vegetarian, or if you're a vegetarian all along? Because, it's not necessarily impossible because you've done it.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit, it takes time to have an appropriate plan where you hit your macros and your targets and things like that. So let's start off with, why did you make the choice to be a vegetarian?
Okay, so I myself didn't make that choice. And I'll break down the story for you. And that is, my parents were both raised on farms. And when they got married, so that would have been in the late 60s, they were looking at the meat in like Safeway, and they were like, look how red it is. This is not the meat that we're used to from farms, like what we remember. And then my mom began to do more kind of, background and reading about the beginning of steroids in meat and growth hormone and all these, additional things that they were adding. And so gradually they decided to cut out meat, and then they cut out chicken, and the last thing they cut out was fish. And at that time, I came along.
Okay.
But you see, what I would also add to that is, at that point in time, up until the mid 90s, in the Western culture, vegetarianism was very different. You were like, are you in a cult? Or are you like, are you telling me you don't eat meat? But in the Indo-Canadian culture, and actually the Asian culture, whether you're South Asian or Asian, vegetarianism is not a new thing. And so my parents really exposed me to a great deal of culture. So we would go for an Indo-Canadian meal, or we would go for a Chinese meal, and in the Chinese, that there would be tofu. So that was the kind of the beginning of that. And my mom kind of experimented on my dad and I with these new, lentil beans, and I'm going, oh God, like my dad's like looking at me like, just eat it, okay, just eat it. So it wasn't always easy, but and if I had $1 for every time that I was asked, what do you mean you've never had a burger? So one of your questions is what everyone else is going to ask. Have I tried fish? Have I tried red meat? Have I tried chicken? I've tried all of them. I've tried a small amount, because in order to answer that question, how do you know unless you've tried it, right? So I don't think, I tried a minimal amount. If the doctor told me, okay, Jason, you're really lacking in something, I think you should eat tuna, then I would eat it. If I had to eat chicken or tuna, I would, but I would never eat red meat. For me, it's just it's a different, consistency. I probably have unknowingly eaten chicken and not known it. But the moment that I bite into something like a burrito that's meat, warning, there's a bite, right? So that kind of
like the gaminess.
Yeah, it's just I don't know what the correct word would be, but it's just like it's like with like tofu, if you have like a Chinese meal with tofu, and if it's being cooked properly, it is almost like chicken, that same consistency. But with red meat, there's more of a fibrous, I guess, what you're saying, so it does set off an alarm bells. But
Yeah, because I always found that interesting. And now you're probably looking at it like, you guys have freaking everything. How are you guys complaining? You got the simulated meats, you got high protein, vegetarian, this, that, or the other. We're talking about back in your time.
Yeah.
There weren't these options. You know what I mean? We're talking about, it was like, and you know what? To be completely honest, it may have been better, because we really don't know. When I read the label of some of these products, because I spent, you probably don't know, I spent about 5 years as a vegetarian, and I experimented 2 years as a vegan.
Okay.
Right. To actually go through it, because my brothers, they're vegetarians. And my parents, they don't eat meat either. So I said, screw it, let's give it a go. And I do periodic trips to India. And when you're there, I don't want to go to the religious areas and eat meat and then go there. But at the same time, to be honest, I don't really trust the meat all that much, right? I'd have to have it like super, super, super like high temperature just to burn everything. So I would always come back and be like, all right, screw it, I'm gonna ride with this and go with it. And for me, I can agree. Like when I had lamb the first time after coming off the vegetarian stuff, it's just different. It didn't sit well for me. And I agree, like chicken, fish, whole eggs, and egg whites were okay. Like I didn't have a problem with that, in small portions too, right? I guess now I want to kind of segue into like, you were in the era and time where social media and even the internet, there was a period of time where it wasn't as like you didn't have access to all these resources.
No.
And as people can, if people are watching, they can see that you're a well-read person with the amount of books behind you. You've actually shared a bunch of books and magazines with me.
Yeah.
And I still have them to this day. They're at my other house now. So what were kind of like your early resources or role models that you looked up to in terms of figuring out the whole bodybuilding side of things, in terms of how to train and how to eat towards your goals and build muscle? Because it's going to be tricky now unless we post pictures of you in your heyday. Even now, for somebody your age, you're still in phenomenal shape, right? I know you were saying before we hopped on air that now you got a desk job, so you got to kind of get creative with your cardio and stuff like that. But what were some of your early resources that you used, and then maybe even some role models or gym bros that helped you out?
I mean, these are all great questions. So my dad was not my dad enjoyed watching boxing on TV, but he wasn't really he wasn't a gym dad. He did not inspire me to do it. He didn't understand it. And my uncle, who was built like a WWF guy, said, if you want to, get bigger, then just work hard and you'll get big. Like, why do you want to have all this flashy, right? And so the first thing I did probably in 1984 was I bought a York dumbbell kit.
Are those the gold
plastic
ones?
Yeah.
With the sand in there. I had those too.
So that and a bench. And I would be up in my room, and I had the probably 1960 or late 50s, of the little kind of cutout guys, and there's the guy early. But that was the beginning, and it was great because it was time for just me. It was my time, and it wasn't something it wasn't my dad's thing. It wasn't my mom's thing. This was my thing. And so to answer your question, of course, like millions and millions of people around the world, it was Arnold, Conan the Barbarian, I think, and, most of the men, all of the men in my family on both sides are quite big men, whether they're tall or whatever. My uncle, like I said, was probably, I don't know, 300 pounds, maybe. He was a big guy. So at that point, I was quite skinny. And so that's what I wanted to, of course, I wanted this now, wanted it instantly, like, after a week or two, like, are they growing? And somewhere I do have a chart, And first I can share this and kind of smile. I think my arms were like 13 and 3/4. It's like a tick. And then, but it was so cool that 2 months later they were 14 inches. And then it just like, or the weight would go up. Oh my God, I couldn't do that 100, whatever it is, 100-pound bench press. Now I can do 110 and it's easy. So it's such a pump, like not just the physical pump, but oh my God, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting bigger. This really works.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and to tie into your other part of the question, and part of the reason that I give back to the gym community is I asked all the guys that I thought were really cool and they were big and they were benching 2 plates, the mighty 2 plates aside,
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can you show me tricks? And I was polite and they showed me. They saw what I have seen many times, and with you as well. If you're young and you're eager, yeah, okay, I'll show you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why for me it's a great joy to give back. I don't want to be I would never do it to get paid for it. It's just nice to give back.
So I'm going to challenge you a little bit on that part. So I kind of filled your shoes in a sense when you left. I'm not like my vibe is not as, because you were like the Yoda, like I said a bunch of times on this podcast, where you could just walk over to somebody, give them the tips, and you had done it so many times throughout the years that you're like, whether he does it or not is irrelevant.
Yeah.
I kind of got it off my chest that like, hey, I gave this piece of advice. And so now I feel like there's so much free information now with the internet. You can go back to old forums where these guys were talking, like the forums were very popular at a certain point. You could download any book you want on the subject. So now there's so much information. People are like, well, even if you give them additional information, they're not going to take it like as if this is like very valuable material. They'll just kind of throw it in the same pile of, I could see this on Google, or I could read a book from Arnold, or blah, blah, blah. And when you charge them, some money. So for me, I've had some people, I literally wrote plans for them a decade ago. They never followed it.
Yeah.
And then they hired me again. And then I charged them. And then they followed it to a T. And then I asked them at the end of the coaching, why was this time different? They're like, to be honest, it's because I paid you a reasonable amount of money. I had skin in the game.
Yeah.
And that's why I followed through. So I still help people. If I see something like really, really bad, and you get to read people's body language quite well. You could tell like this kid looks like he'll be pretty receptive. So I'm going to go approach him.
Yeah.
This guy seems like he's got a massive ego. I don't know if I'm going to go talk to him. You kind of catch the body language and kind of the energy within the gym. So there's still people like, there are still kids out there that are willing to learn. One of them came up to us and asked us how to do, I don't know if you're familiar with the Gironda dips.
Oh,
his weird style of doing dips, right? And oddly enough, that's the style that I prefer, where it's kind of more pec dominant. Not exactly like how he does them, like in the old school way. There's a slight variations just because I don't want to tear my shoulder out of the joint. But I showed him, and the feeling of helping people. And here's another thing. We're both here. We both got advice from you, throughout the years. And I always like to tell people, like, sometimes they get into a dark place and they talk about like, what the hell have I even done? And we can tell you like here, like those tips that you gave us in the gym that kept us going, the conversations about longevity when we were young and dumb and we thought we were invincible. Actually, they were actually like in the side of our head, like, oh, Jason actually said this. The truth be told is like Army guy said this. Army guy was doing this. Army guy made the change here. You got some concepts that I feel like are uniquely yours, like the red zone.
Okay.
You got the green zone, the amber zone, and then you got the red zone. So I think those type of things, like, we're going to get into it eventually, but like you're an author, right? I feel like you should probably write some fitness or training related book with some of the unique concepts. I know that you have a ton of books where you talk to, like, you're like, oh, I did this program, I've done that program. Like, I learned about logbooking from you, not Dorian Yates. A lot of people learned it from Dorian Yates saying, "Oh, log your lifts," right? But my first, like even conversation about logging my lifts was through you. And then I watched you like literally write it down in the gym, and you're like, "How else are you gonna know what you did last week?"
Yeah.
And I like, I laugh. I'm like, I go to the washroom, I sit down on the toilet, I open the drawer just to see like what reading materials there. And sure enough, I got a book from 05, 06, and it's my lifts.
Yeah.
And I look back and I'm like, holy crap, I used to lift that much weight for this. Right. And then it even said like in brackets, like Sonny said your form was bad. Right. So I would grill him. Like, screw you, what do you know? Right. But I would in brackets write, Sonny said form was bad. And then I would be like, okay, I'm not going ahead with this until I get the check mark saying that the form was good.
And
right.
That would be fucked.
Huh?
After making that comment, my set next that he has watching,
would make you pay for it. So I wanna get a question out with this, and that's before we get into the writing and author, I want to get into more about if somebody comes to you that are vegetarian, because I have clients that are vegetarians, but now they're vegetarians as well. They want to put on some muscle. I don't want to really single out saying a hard gainer or somebody that is having a tough time losing weight. Now you have so many years of experience, 35 years plus. What advice would you give to somebody that's coming into the gym, vegetarian? They have maybe a year's worth of experience and they want to pack on some muscle or just get into that lifestyle. What are some like nuggets that you can give to those people? It could be nutrition related, it could be training related, anything. I think because I get the question a lot, you've probably been asked countless times, where do you get your protein from? Right. Which, if you want to go down that path, you can, but what piece of advice or some nuggets would you give to somebody that's maybe they got about a year of experience, vegetarian?
Okay.
And what would you
do? I mean, this is really, really important. One of the things I would say is that too many people think as a protein shake as a meal. And I would really tell people get out of that concept, because the protein shake is there to fill in those gaps that you're missing. Now, I can only talk to you about what I've done and the journey that I've made, but I've been having protein shakes back in the day when I was probably 14, or even before that, when I was probably 8 or 9, actually. And there was something here that my grandma, my mom's mom, had, and it was called tiger's milk. Nothing to do with tigers, but it was the beginning of protein powder. I guess she was worried about me, but didn't want to address it. Will this kid be? And just as a side note, my mom's side of the family are pretty much rednecks. They, not in the sense that they're racist or anything, but they would go and hunt and they fish and they have the 4x4. That's changed now over the years. But there used to be, yeah, my grandpa had a gun case, and my uncle had like bear rugs on the wall and like in taxidermy, right? So they were worried about their grandson not getting enough protein. So at the beginning, I do believe that my grandma said, very subtly, hey, try this milkshake. It's chocolate. So fast forward, when I really started to get my groove on for what I really wanted, I would be putting I would be putting raw eggs into my protein shake. Right now, I'm not advocating that people go wild with raw eggs. Again, I can only tell you that at 53, so I just turned 53, that I haven't had any issues. So how many raw eggs do I have? I have 3. I have 3 raw eggs. I have a cup of, like a small cup of the actual protein powder, and maybe 1/4 of an inch of milk just to mix it up. But to answer your question, frequency of meals, and I know that now you're the younger generation, that it's different. It's every generation has this key that they feel is this is what you need to do. But I think what's helped me and to keep my weight on as being your 3 main meals, I mean, I don't need to educate people about what is good to eat and what isn't. But in between, so like at 10 o'clock, if you have a coffee break, even if you don't have much time, have some mixed nuts and a banana, or yogurt. With Greek yogurt, it's excellent, but make sure that you look at the ingredients. If the sugar is higher than the protein, probably not the best choice, right? Not everything in nature is supposed to taste great. This is the thing about healthy food. We're so used to having things with salt, added sodium, or added sugar, and it's everywhere. So inadvertently, you don't realize how much sugar that you're actually taking in. Anyway, so with the Greek yogurt, the mixed nuts, and for your, I mean, again, I'm not going to go into what beans are great. There's a lot of different things you can have, but the frequency of meals, they don't have to be big meals. Like on the way to the gym, I will have, protein bar and a handful of mixed nuts. After the gym, I don't want my body to be going like into any kind of starvation mode. So I have an apple and another handful of nuts. Then when I get home, I will have dinner. And for those people that are quote unquote hard gainers, a protein powder that they do have the weight gainer, but that should really only be used, in my opinion, for people who are in their teens. If you're an adult and you're in your 20s, unless you have a medical problem, which then you should probably go to a doctor, taking a weight gainer, you're going to put on a lot of weight, but a lot of that will be fat. So you gotta, yeah. But I think the keep on that path, and water. I mean, not to be graphic, but I mean, if you're having problems in any way of going to the washroom, simple thing is you're not drinking enough water. Your body should not be straining to go to the washroom. And what happens if you're not taking in enough water, it takes it from your bowels. And that's what makes you, difficult in passing, right?
Yeah.
And, to any young kids, or younger people, I don't want to say young kids, young adults or whatever, stop with these energy drinks. If you need, I mean, what do I have? I have a coffee. Black coffee, one coffee on the way to the gym, that's enough. But what concerns me is this pre-workout. You're not going to have an excellent workout every time that you go to the gym. And I've actually had a guy jonesing in the men's room or in the changing room. Hey, bro, do you have any pre-workout? And he was already had in his head that it was going to be a shitty workout if he didn't have his pre-workout. So you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with the mental concept, I've got to have this or I'm not going to be able to do it. And then your body, as you guys know, is going to get used to that amount. First it's 1 scoop, then it's 2 scoops. How much, so it's great to have on a day that you really feel shitty. Maybe you didn't have much sleep. It's like having, as you guys have in your gym bag, you've got your gym wraps, or you've got your knee wraps, you've got your belt, then have a little bit in there, but not every day.
Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about, like for myself, I don't use the pre-workouts that are stimulant based anymore.
Right.
More these new style, the blood full ones, like that are just full of arginine and full of like citrulline and those kind of things, which just promotes blood flow more than energy. What do you feel? Like, do you have any opinion on those?
You know what? I mean, you guys have your finger on the pulse of all this new stuff, and really it's trial and error. I mean, I'll be honest with you. The only thing natural that I've tried that's worked, creatine. And everyone is now saying creatine is the go-to one.
100%.
But again, you can't go nutty with that. I mean, you got to be careful. You got to put it, have it on cycles, right? Or whatever you choose to do. But
yeah. So on that topic, I just had a consult with Chris Tuttle, who is a very successful coach, a registered dietitian as well, worked in hospitals, and I think he's got his master's in nutrition and dietetics, right? But he's also in the bodybuilding world for a long time.
Right.
And he talks about like, man, your food is the key. Like, yeah, you can use essential amino acids, BCAAs, you could use the pre-workouts and things like that. I mean, it's tricky. I had a phase where like I was actually introduced to, do you remember the old NO Explode?
Yeah.
That was like, I don't know, was it Sonny you introduced me to that, or you introduced me to the stronger 1MR Jack 3D formulas?
I think 1MR, we all just equally saw it.
Yeah, but I think Sonny got me on to some of these things, right? Like he's like, hey, have you tried this? Like he just kind of exposed us to it.
You super pump because I never took an Explode.
Yeah, so I remember I actually had like 5 years every workout I took it.
Wow.
Like I got addicted to it.
I was worried about you guys, dude. Like,
yeah.
I was scared, man. They were taking pre-workout like 1.2 scoops. And I was like, yeah. And it's because it was just like they would take it and we just do cardio. I'm like, that's not supposed to happen. Right?
Yeah, I don't think I ever took it. I think that's more so Jiggy did it before, but we got to a point, Jason, where it was pretty bad. And you know what? You get to that point where unfortunately it's a lot to do with like the marketing, and then it is actually like anything. As somebody that has 2 or 3 cups of coffee every day to cut it out, you know, that's just caffeine withdrawal. Imagine if you add stimulants to the mix that you use for mental alertness and like the pump in the gym. So Sonny is referring to like citrulline malate, you know, that's a substance that just helps with blood flow to the muscle, right? And so those are the type of things. But when I hear you talk, I'm like, oh, this sounds very familiar to what Chris was saying in terms of like, yeah, like you can, but you don't really need it. Sometimes just drinking water throughout your workout is plenty. Like you don't have to mix in 2 or 3 or 4 ingredients. And there's different schools of thought. Like lately I've been just doing water in the gym. And I'm telling you, like, it doesn't take anything away from me if my nutrition is on point. Now, if there's something lacking in my nutrition and then I have these like intra-workout drinks, they help. But I always go back and forth because I'll read I'll read the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Or I'll read like, you know, the Keys to the Universe with Bill Pearl. And I'm like, I don't need this stuff. Look at the bodies they built back in the day, you know? So I always go back and forth with that type of stuff. I think that's good in terms of the nutrition side of things, but would you have any tips for them from the training side of things? Because they can go on and basically pick any training program online. Do you have any suggestions for them from a training perspective? Because now you have that experience, right? Many years.
It's funny because, you know, us knowing one another for a long time, I kind of laugh at some of these things that you are telling me about, and I forgot about the whole amber zone. You know, it's like, if you talk to my wife or you talk to my kids, they probably go, I never knew that. So I suppose to just touch on that, because, you know, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but I think the expectations of anybody in the gym is number one, what do you want? Do you want to get fit? Do you want to get strong? Are you playing for a sport? You know, what is it that you really want, right? That's important to have that, you know, I mean, you know, do you want to get to be a quote unquote bodybuilder? Do you want to be a weightlifter where you're actually going to compete? They're all different avenues. So for me, I never had any wish to even go down any of those routes. I just enjoy pumping the iron. Even if someone says to me, you know, bodybuilder, I don't know what I am. I just enjoy, but one guy at Optimum said, well, do you try and shape your body? Yeah, I do. He said, well, then you're a bodybuilder. I don't know. It's just, you know,
tomato, basically, because if you think about it, if you lift weights and you train, whether that's sculpting your physique or increasing your performance or speed or whatever, you're essentially building your body.
Yeah.
So everybody could be considered a bodybuilder. It's just that box of like, are you getting in trunks? oiling yourself up, shaving all the hair off, and then posing, right? That's what we refer to as a bodybuilder. But I think anybody that's essentially, if you look at the word building your body, you know, whether that's through playing baseball and doing some weight training to help with that or vice versa, I think it's just, we kind of like to put things in a box to make it like black and white, and it's really not, right? We're in there, you know, we were discussing before we went live about kind of like being able to talk to people in the gym about some of your deepest, darkest stuff that you haven't even talked to, you know, your wife about or your best friend about or whatever. It goes beyond just like pumping just the iron. You look at, you know, I don't know if you watch a lot of Netflix, but Arnold had his own docuseries, right? And I really liked it because it kind of shows like the difference in eras.
Yep.
1970s, they all train in one mecca gym. Then they go to the beach afterwards. They go to the same place for lunch. They're all kind of around each other. And like now, if you, I don't know if you're familiar with how the bodybuilding scene is. It's more like to the side. It's like the freak show in a way,
right?
Versus back in the day, it seemed like, oh wow, those guys look amazing. And I'm not. I love the bodybuilding lifestyle. I like that stuff. I like the fact that there's different categories and it continues to grow. Obviously, like anything, there's like a dark side, you know, with the drugs and things like that. But in terms of like what it does, if you think about it, like in my opinion, I put you as a bodybuilder. You eat to build muscle, to stay strong and fit. And you know, if we were talking about, hey Jason, you want to get strong, you should just be doing the big 5 powerlifting movements. Sure. But you're not doing that. You're doing your flies, you're doing your curls. You're like, oh, okay, looks nice. And let's not even talk about Jay Cutler, Jason. Right? No. So Sonny, you remember the days when he dyed his hair? He's shredded, he's tanned, he looks like he's like ready to compete. And I called him Jay Cutler at the time. But sorry guys, I'm just going on a tangent because it's been a long time. But
okay, you wanted three tips, right?
That's right.
Okay, I'll give you the tips. To any young guy, if you want to put some size on or get to be strong, limit the amount of time you are on your phone. You are wasting. If you here's my thing. Don't be telling your bros that you spent 2.5 hours in the damn gym if you're on your phone updating your TikTok videos or all that bullshit. If you're gonna go to the gym, train. If not, stay at home. Don't look in the mirror and go, I wonder why I'm not growing. You know, so that's number one. If you're resting for more, unless you're doing extreme lifts, your heaviest that you can ever go, resting for more than a minute and a half, you're wasting your time. Like what are you doing? So that's my point. The one thing is, have a realistic goal of what you want to achieve. Don't be drawn in like everybody else, including myself at times, is looking at your phone. If you're going to use your phone, then use it as like a diary, just as you mentioned. And I'm pleased to hear that you said in your diary that Sonny said, I did shitty form or whatever. If you're going to do a workout diary, be fair to yourself. I used to do like 0 to 10. How am I feeling on this day? Maybe I had a really tough day at work, so I'm tired. So I would put tough day at work, 6 out of 10 for energy. If you were doing your bench press and you were doing 225, and you wrote down 8, but really someone gave you a hard spot for 2, you're only screwing yourself by writing that down. You could say you did 6 clean ones with 2 assisted, right? You know, so that's the other thing is, and then just to touch on the what is this amber zone thing, right? And that is, it is good to once in a while do your max lift to see where you're at. Going anywhere from 3 or 4 and under, I would consider to be in the amber red zone. If you continue with that, there's going to be a red light that's going to be flashing, and that's going to be your shoulder, your back, or whatever, your knees. So it's okay to do that once in a while. But especially for you, my friend, that you were training in that zone every time, right? And, you know, something was going to go, right? And so you have to monitor that, but and I think the last thing I would say, the most difficult battle that you're going to have is with your own ego, right? um it's okay to cheat at times, but don't cheat to the extent that you're not even doing that exercise. I see guys at the gym that I'm at that think they're doing curling, but it's like they got a shovel and they're doing that. And I look at them and go, like, you're going to tell people that you're like, take the time that the younger generation, if you're going to use your phone, use it to your advantage. If you want to sit there for more than a minute or two, then look at the guy working out. Okay, this is the way to do curls. This is the way to do squats. Learn something from it. But don't be worrying about your friggin' Facebook or your TikTok or whatever bullshit thing is on, right?
Yeah, you know what it is. So I send programs to people and I include links because there are some lifts that people haven't done before. So it's like a quick link of somebody explaining the movement. When I used to just send them like a document, they're like, well, then I get the ping on my WhatsApp or I get the ping in my Facebook.
Yeah.
And then just that dopamine hit of like, I gotta check. And so what actually ended up happening is I actually just sent it to them through a software and they can print it out. And I'm like, you know what? I prefer that you print it out. And I know this is gonna make me sound ancient, but like use a use an iPod or something. Yeah. Right? Because nobody uses those these days. It's wireless headphones, Beats, you connect it to your phone. I know you can put your phone in airplane mode, but I'm telling you, like, you get these like mental things like, I gotta check my phone. Some of my best progress was when I would leave my phone in my car.
Yep.
I'd go into the gym. I'd have this like small little logbook. I'd have this like old, like cheap knockoff iPod thing. I'd have like, and even making your own playlist would be like a exercise of like, okay, I need to have this song in here because this is what I do for my red zone lift. Like I'm taking it to the limit. This is the song. Whereas nowadays people just kind of let it run on Spotify or whatever. But I remember I'd have like 20 songs and that would be the songs that I listened to throughout the whole workout. But they were like, I don't know if you've thought of this before or if you had this happen. You listen to a song and it takes you back to a moment in time in your life.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I listened to these songs and it would take me back to like, this is when I did 100-pound dumbbells incline for 20 reps. This song is what I listened to.
Right.
I'm going to try to reenact it. And what I do is like, I'll listen to the same song at that time. And lo and behold, I almost knock out another 20. It might be 21, might be 18 that day. And when you talk about the logbook, I know I'm jumping around all over the place. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the UK bodybuilders now. Jordan Peters is one of like the guys that's like a pioneer and he's like all about the logbook, right? Primarily you hear about push-pull legs and logbooking and just hardcore training from the UK. And the logbook stuff has been super popular over there. So it's funny, like, just you were coming from England and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, okay, it's cool that now that even the new generation of bodybuilders, I'm sure it's from Dorian Yates. Those guys look at him as like, the main man when it comes to the UK. But I think those are super helpful tips. So thank you. And hopefully that provides some value for some people in terms of like they're starting their journey. That alone, in my opinion, I've done that as of late where I just leave it in the car. My workouts are already 25% better because I'm now focusing on the next set and not hearing the ping or the vibration of the phone in my pocket and getting sidetracked. Because you know how it is. You're about to lift your max lift. And if your phone starts ringing and you're like, oh, geez, you lose your concentration. So that tip alone, even though it might seem so minor, is massive. Now I want to segue things into not only vegetarian, bodybuilder, lived in England, back and forth, all these different things. You're also an author. So I'm going to link them in the description of the video. There's Pucker Factor. There is Combatants of the Sky, I believe, right? In the Sky.
Yeah.
Combatants of the Sky. What got you into the kind of Air Force military style stuff? Was it always a passion when you were younger? And I've always flirted with the idea because I do a lot of just like if I got a problem, I put it down on a piece of paper. So I kind of write my way through a lot of problems. And a lot of the time I'm like, this is like a gem. Like somebody could actually use this in a book of some sort, right? So when I heard you talking about the book and stuff like that, and it kind of inspired me as well to start saving some of the stuff I write down. So one, let's start with the first question. The Air Force and military, has that always been a passion of yours, or did you get into it at a certain point?
Well, so my grandfathers on both sides here and England, they both served during the war, and in my families, there are many veterans, and so my father really instilled in a young boy how important it was to respect those men that served, and the men, and to remember those men that died, and women as well. And so military history, which is most of the books behind me, I've always found both inspiring on the personal stories, because it makes me feel, if I'm having difficulty with, oh, I don't have enough money to pay this, or work is slow, or I'm arguing with my wife, or whatever it is, that's nothing compared to what these men lived and died and came back and still lived their war. So I've always had an interest in it. And then fast forward, so probably in 1998, that's when the internet for me first kind of came into play, and my daughter was born. So I began to buy and sell military antiques on eBay, because my ex-wife stayed home for the first 6 months, and I stayed at home for the next 6 months. And I made some good money on eBay. And then when on fast forward, I had a military history page on Facebook, and I covered all military. And then that got flagged because there were some German content. People couldn't handle that at all. And during that time, I became friends with many, Vietnam veterans, mostly, special forces. And out of that special forces, these guys, they were in a specialized unit called MACV SOG, and they would go, they wore sterile uniforms, which meant they had no indicating markings on them that they were from the US. If they were captured, the US government would say, they're not ours. So in the beginning, it was like a CIA run thing. Anyway, so I became friends with these guys. I created a private page for them, where you have to be a veteran or from the family or whatever. But no, and there are a couple people like me who were hardcore historians. So then as time passed, I thought these guys have some amazing stories. And so I asked a few of them, hey, would you mind if I wrote a book and I shared the stories? And, fast forward now, I'm on to my fourth book. And I would say that and how you get to that point is nobody should be scared about writing a book. You can learn about it. It's KDP, which is an Amazon way of printing. And it's if you wanted a book, they print the book for you. If you know what I mean. If it's on demand, so that's KDP.
Yeah, I'm gonna note that down.
Yeah. And so basically, what you can do is you can go, like for me, I use a program called Canva, which enables you. You can do the free version, or you can do the one where you pay for it, which is much better. And you can do typing in there, and you can do graphics, very easy to use. And from there, you can upload that. I'm jumping here quite a few steps. But you can upload that to Amazon, and to do an ebook is super easy. And if anybody has any questions, you can buy. If anybody wants to know, they can reach out to you, and you can give them my email.
We're gonna have your, with your permission, we're gonna have your information in the description of the episode. So if any like social media outlet that you prefer, we're going to have that. So then if people want to reach out to you, because, there's a possibility that we have, we talked about various different things already about, your beginnings. Maybe there's other people that are originally from England and from where you're from and where you spent time. there's a lot of different. So we always like to have some form of a way for people to contact you. So with some of the links to your books, we'll also have your contact info so people can reach out to you for sure.
Yeah.
So now this is usually the most exciting part. So Sonny, do you got the questions? I think you might be. Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah, I got it.
So now it's a speed round. So you could definitely elaborate on any of the answers, or you could just kind of leave it one and done. Just answer it real quick. We say speed round, but sometimes some of the questions need a little bit more backstory or details.
All right.
So if you feel like you want to elaborate, totally cool.
Okay, we'll start with this. I think I might know this answer already myself, but I'm gonna let you answer it. Your favorite car?
That would be a Benz, an SLS.
I knew it.
Man, I thought it was gonna be a Porsche.
No,
because you had did you not have a Porsche? You did, right?
I did have an older Porsche, yeah, but that was a 928. But I drove like an AMG SLS down in Vegas on a track.
I remember that.
What year? I remember you did have a trip where you were actually on the track. I remember.
Yeah.
So what year?
Oh, that was probably 10 years ago. I went.
No. So it's your favorite car. So what year of the model?
Oh, it's probably 2010.
Okay.
They do have them, yeah, but they've gone. You can get the same body style, but it's like a GT or GTS. The SLS, the windows, they or the doors are like gull wing doors, but they're like $300,000. So, yeah.
Your favorite compound lift?
Probably a bench.
Bench press. Incline flat. So.
For fun, I would say flat, but for muscle building, low incline.
Your favorite day of the week?
Probably Thursday.
Why is that?
Because you're almost there. You're almost to you're over the hump. Monday you gotta dig that hole again. You gotta then for Monday it's I was telling my mom this. I said I gotta go. I said I'm in the gym parking lot here, and it's like International Chest Day. And she said, "What?" She said, "Are you
every Monday?"
Yeah. She said, "Are you telling me that there's an international?" I said, "Mom, I'm just playing around with you." Like, but yeah.
What was the most challenging moment in your life?
The most challenging moment in my life was, and I don't have a problem talking about this, was knowing that my dad had 3 months left of his life because he had a brain tumor, and it was being strong for him. And he was very worried about my mom and I, and he wasn't worried about his own leaving, but he was really worried about what are you going to do when I'm gone? How are you going to be able to cope? So, yeah, that was, yeah.
What's the last song you downloaded?
I don't download any songs because that would be illegal.
Let's say the last song you listened to quite a bit.
I like when I'm so when I'm working out, I really like some intensity. So for me being from England and from the 90s or late 80s, it would have to be something kind of techno, but more recently probably Rammstein kind of gets my German blood going a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
At what age would you want to retire?
So I'm 53 now. I don't really, there is no real, I would have to do something to answer your question. So if I told you 55, if I could afford to at 55, I would still have to do something. I don't want to sit around and get fat.
What would you do? What would you do? So like, let's say you had an ideal time you could retire. Let's say tomorrow, financially you're set. Right.
So I would reach out to a group that caters to troubled youth, and I would offer my time to show them the actual benefits of the gym. And I'm not talking about getting big. I'm not talking about getting strong. I'm talking about the actual release of negative energy. You can turn such a negative energy of anger into a positive anger. And nobody wants to feel angry. Nobody wants to have anxiety. And there's no better way. I mean, when I was young, bear in mind, I was a young man at this point in my life. But when I was going boxing, when I was like 16, 17, it was like, you know what? I want to try this out now. And, like I said, a different age, different time, but you throw drinking in there too. And it's a different mindset where the gym has never given me that feeling. After I leave there, I'm calm, I'm relaxed.
So and that same redirection, man, is what created a 6 times Mr. Olympia.
Yeah.
Dorian Yates' story is that he got in some trouble, and he started lifting weights out there, and he noticed that he grew a lot faster than everybody else.
Yeah.
And he basically took that, because if anybody can kind of watch his documentaries and his episodes and stuff and find out about Dorian Yates' life, but he got into weightlifting. Somebody said, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. You should keep doing it."
Yeah.
And that's all it takes sometimes. And you know what? Sometimes those kids that have, tough challenges or they're in these tough spots, that outlet, you can some people go to a dark place when they lift, right? They go to a dark place and they're able to move some weight or train with such high intensity. It's like this guy's like he's possessed. But the thing is, sometimes you can take that negative and put it into a positive. It was articulated really well how you just said that, because you could, that's what we've all done. The more I talk to people, there's always something. I meet very few people that their life was sunshine and rainbows and like literally nothing went wrong. There was always some form of trauma, and obviously people that have gone through a lot more would look at somebody else's and be like, well, that's not so bad, but I mean, that's massive. That's huge. I think that's kind of what you're already doing in the gym when you were giving tips and helping people out that kind of went through those doors. And I always say the same thing too, like the kids that come in to do jujitsu and they want to learn for self-defense, and I'm like, you should go into the gym and lift some weights too.
Yeah.
I always tell them, like, eat some more food, lift some weights, do it in conjunction with this stuff. Like, it's not just all of a sudden you're going to be a scrawny kid. And I don't want to hijack that, but well said, man. I absolutely agree with you.
I do want to add just one thing to that, and that is that it's a pivotal point that an event happened that when I used to work at the bar on the door, and a circumstance happened and I went overboard on somebody. And at that point forward, I promised myself, well, first of all, I looked at this guy and I thought, this guy did not take my dad. This guy did not, he was not involved with my girlfriend and I having problems. This man did not deserve what he got. So from that point on, I never took out my anger on somebody to that degree. And it's really, it was a good learning lesson, but it was just,
You told me this story.
Yeah.
You told me the story in the gym, and not intentionally, but I kind of think the same way sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like I could probably do some damage to this person. I'm just going to walk away. Let's not even talk about like the legal side of things. If I were to do, if you were to do something, but just thinking about like, this guy, well said, he's not responsible for all this stuff. So why I got to feed him an extra 10 shots or whatever, right? Because of my own aggression. I mean, that story you told me actually years ago.
Yeah.
So, it's funny. I still remember it, and I keep it in the back of my head sometimes when there's certain scenarios, right? Like that's huge.
You really, now it's funny that you got everyone here is a father. And it's not until you realize that if you can't keep your ego in check as a father, what are you going to, if something happened to you, you're going to leave your kids without your dad because he doesn't keep his keep his temper in check.
You said it perfectly, dude. Like one of my best friends, he had his kids before all of us, and he was one of my boys like that. Anything happens, he's like the first one to like, like about to cause damage. We're right behind him, and I remember him telling me, he's like, man, he had his daughter, and he's like, it changed him. He's like, he's had situations in the car and people mouthing him off, and he's just looking back, and he just like,
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Right? And myself, like I have issues too with the anger and whatnot, and road raging is one of my fucking. I get annoyed at stuff, right? And in cases in the past where I've gone out of cars, I've chased people, whatever I've done stupid stuff. Like I've had it. I remember an incident not too long ago, but daughter was in the car, my wife's in the front seat, and this guy is trying to cut me off. He's mouthing me off. He's like, "Get out of your car! Get out of your car!" I'm looking at him. I'm like, and I'm like, this guy, like, that's it. I'm like about to get out. It seems like my wife grabs my arm. She's like, "Yo, she's in the car." I look back, and my daughter's looking at me. She's like, just so innocent.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could literally lash out right now, and either something could fire back at her, or I could be in a situation. I want to elaborate on your question. You said earlier, like your answer was how you'd go and help the youth and everything about channeling their energies. I'm a huge preacher in that, because I mean, I struggle with mental health and a lot of stuff, and going to the gym has been my place. But over the last few years, I kind of lost that. So, question for you, maybe for someone else that's listening after this: have you ever had a time in your life where like that was your place, that was your sanctuary? You went there for your anger, your whatever was going on in life, but you got to a point where like things were just going crazy. Like for me, I think it was my injuries. My injuries caused me to go there and not being able to train the way I want to train, being in pain and leaving there more angry, more frustrated, with half-ass pump, angry now, and learning to cope that, hey, if I'm having a day where my chest is sore, my shoulders hurting, switch up the exercises, or you know what, just do cardio.
Yeah.
And that took me a while, man. I still have days where I'm still channeling that. Like today was a good day, I had a good workout, but like the day before I went in, my lower back was hurting from a previous accident. I couldn't do half the stuff I wanted to do. So like, have you ever had days like that? Is there any advice that you can give on like,
well, yeah, I'm a pretty open book because I come from kind of an old school family where you don't talk about mental health, and in England especially, you don't even talk to your own, like you're outside of, like you would not tell your uncle and aunt.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, and so really when my daughter was born, I started to have mental health never really bothered me when I was younger, but when my daughter was born, I don't know what, maybe the added responsibility, I don't have the answer for it, but I did have to go and seek help.
Yeah.
And I do take something for that. So that's 25 years. And I'm happy that you touched on this because it's you guys being younger. I'm so happy that you're able to talk about mental health, and it doesn't mean that you're a weak guy or that you're whatever. It doesn't mean that you're flawed or whatever. So to answer your question, probably when I saw you last, I was going through a rough time, but I always maintained going to the gym because I 99.99%. Sorry, guys.
All good. No worries.
I don't know how I can stop that, but here's the thing. If I'm going to push something, I would tell people 99.99% you will feel better when you leave that gym. Doesn't matter what you do. If you go there and do cardio, I would advise, if you're feeling low, you have some mood issues or whatever, push yourself a little bit harder, get the sweat going, get flowing, right? But I would like to say one thing, and that is that it's very easy to go to the gym. And when I was there with you guys and all the other guys in the gym, because mentally I felt very low, I wanted to keep my music in my ears, even if I didn't have it on. Now, there were times I didn't want to engage with people because I knew that the look on my face, I wasn't my normal jovial self. And I knew that people would be saying, oh, you look a little low today. You want to talk about it? No, I don't want to fucking talk about it. So that's why I thought if I have that in my ears. But then I realized something, that you guys and the other people that we all know there are all my friends. And I realized this is not helping me. I'm closing down in the environment that's always been safe to me. I trust these people. These people have shared very in-depth things with me, very personal things with me. So I took my earbuds out and I began to say, talk to you both. Nothing about, or how are you feeling? You know what? I'm feeling like shit, but I'm here. I'm getting on with it. Doesn't mean you got to talk about it. Everybody's there to work out, but it's okay to acknowledge you're having a shitty day. I'm feeling low. Okay, bro, I hear you. And just to have that, maybe I felt shitty last week. Just that acknowledgement that you're not alone, right?
No, I feel you, man. Like that's what like my biggest change was even leaving Optimum because that was home.
Yeah.
And finding a new gym, like I mean, I've made some friends there. Scotty's there. I see him quite a bit now, and it's running into him. It's pure memories. I should just text him right now. I sent him a picture of three of us.
Oh.
He's like, are you on live right now? I'm gonna jump on. I'm like, no, it's not live. But like, you said it perfectly, man. Just talking about it. Like, like sometimes I do the same thing you do. Like I had the headphones in, but my music's I'm nothing going on. No music, nothing. And it's just in my ear because I'm just in a zone where I don't want to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And like there's a few people in the gym that I'm now close with that do catch it.
Yeah.
They'll be like, hey, you're right. They can tell my good days and bad days, right? Like you can figure it out. And you just that couple words to them, just like, yeah, man, this and that. And it's like that pat on the back, like, hey, you're here though. Like that's life. That's what we're about. At least you're here. You're not out doing something stupid. You're not in a bed crying. You're just, you're in here. You're still putting through your body through it. You're going to get through it. That's just part of the game, right? But the mental health side of it, and honestly, half of it's not even, there's no real issues, man. I think it's just society. It's all this, it's what's happening out there, the unknown. And with my kids now too, like you're always thinking a million different things now, like the way things are. But yeah, sorry, that conversation went a little crazy there, but
no, I think it's really important because I mean I think it's like my father always told me, keep your secrets close to you, because people will see that that's your flaw, and when they see that you're weak, not weak like, but you're having a bad day, they might take that opportunity, right?
And your father in a way was right, and that's something I've heard from my grandfather. He was different. He had so much faith that he's like, if it's not in your hands, leave it to God, and that's it. And props to him how he did that. I have unbelievable. Like he's like, if you can't physically change it, you can't get someone to change it. You can't do anything about it. Let it go.
That's very Sonny. That's very similar to stoicism. People that they're more stoic. They're kind of like, I can't really control what happens. I can control my response to it, type of thing.
Yeah, and that's what he said. He's like, whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. What's your next step?
He was very Jason. You never met him, but I had very few interactions with Sonny's grandpa, and shit could be hitting the fan, so to speak. Yeah, and he's cool as a cucumber.
The guy, like just like your dad, like he was on no medication, no nothing. He didn't even take a Tylenol, dude. His medication was alcohol. Prostate cancer, which spread to his bladder, which spread to his spine. And when they told us he doesn't have much time left, he's sitting there in pain. He knows he's dying. He's asked me, because I'm a nurse myself, so I had to ask him that question, like, what do you want to do? Do you want us to revive you? And he looked at me, he's like, am I gonna die? And I'm like, I broke, because like I asked people's family members all that time, right? But having asked my own was a whole different game. And it was crazy to see people coming with this frown face, upset, like, oh, we feel bad for you. And he looks at them, he's like, I got to see my grandkids, I got to see all my kids get married. I'm in Canada, I've been enjoying my life. Why are you, what do I have to be upset about? It's my time. I'm 76 years old, like, shitty way to go. But like the guy was doing push-ups and chin-ups up until he died.
Wow. Hardcore.
Like, dude, he beat up the nurse at the hospital, and he's full-blown cancer patient. I had to get called 3 o'clock in the morning because he was from the army too, right? Like he was a boxer in the army, he was a wrestler, so he came back from like he's really well trained. And I got a call at 3 o'clock in the morning. The nurse is like, "Yo, we need you to come in. Your grandfather's really aggressive." I'm like, "That's not normal for him. Like, what? He's not that type of guy." Found out they gave him a lot of morphine. He was hallucinating. So when I went in, we're in this room where you can see at the ceremonial, you can see Tim Hortons and everything.
Right.
I see Tim Hortons. He sees tanks and his people dying. So he was hallucinating. He thought the nurses were people from the opposite side to have him like in a hospital or something. And the nurse came up and he's like, "I just saw your grandpa standing there." And I'm like, "Hey, sir, how you doing?" My grandpa speared him on the ground and started throwing punches on him. And then the security guards came and grabbed him, and he told me, he's like, "Yeah, like it was just, yeah, man, crazy times." Yeah, no, that the mental health thing is just something that I always try to address that, because like I've had people around me that have taken their lives from it, and it's talking about it's a big thing. But like you see, your father was saying, you got to be careful who you talk to.
Yeah,
it's the wrong people. You say everyone looks like they might be a friend, but then all of a sudden they might use that against you, and then you're back. It's at that point, it's either are you strong enough to still stay open, or are you going to go back to being a close person, right?
Yeah, it's a tricky one too, because when Jason opened up and he talks and he lets, I remember there was a period of time, if you don't mind me saying, like you're some challenges at work. Let's leave it at that, right? And before we would never have those conversations. And that's another tip, I guess you could say. Learn how to have conversations, but still keep your workout flow going too. Because some people will just stand there and talk for 20 minutes, whereas we would talk for like a quick, like for example, you'd be doing a set of dumbbell pressing and I'd be doing pec deck, and we'd meet at where the dip machine is, and I'd hang on one side, you'd hang on the other side, and it would just be like, all right, yeah. So it kind of resumed the conversation and go back, Harp is really good at that. Even though he makes you screw up your workout, he'll get his workout done and still talk to you throughout the whole 2 hours or whatever amount of time he's there. But
we'll go next question. Favorite childhood TV show or movie?
I would say a movie. Probably the first movie I saw on my own would be Blade Runner. So that kind of
classic.
It took me to a different place, and it was so different and dark, and it had a lot of atmosphere to it. So that was, yeah.
I watched that one, and then I watched a new one because I'd never watched Blade Runner before, but I wanted to watch the original because when I did some research, they're like, you have to watch the original before you watch this new one with Ryan Gosling that came out it's probably been a few years now. Epic. If you haven't watched it, you guys should watch it. Get over the fact that it's an old movie and graphics and CGI are not there, but it's a great movie.
If money wasn't an issue, where would you travel to? Basically your dream destination. If you had all the money in the world, and you could just right now choose to go somewhere that you've been wanting to go.
Vietnam or Thailand, probably.
Is that because of the army background stuff? Or
I think because Vietnam would be a little bit of that, but just I like to go to places that have really rich history. So with Vietnam, they were constantly invaded, but they constantly fought back, right? So that that the Japanese were there. Then, first of all, the Chinese were there. Then the Japanese were there. Then the French were there, and then the Americans were there. So there's a lot of history there, and but yeah, that's probably.
Thailand's got history like that too, or is that just a place you just want to visit? It's beautiful there. I know for a lot of people that have gone, it's like amazing. Like
China?
Thailand.
Oh, Thailand, yeah.
Thailand, right?
Thailand, correct. Yeah. It wouldn't be China. That's not on my list. But I think that my wife has been to Phuket in Thailand. Cambodia. It just looks so different. And my mom and my stepfather have been all throughout there. Cambodia, like Angkor Wat. They went to all around. So
yeah, even Dennis James, one of the 90s bodybuilders, he stayed there. He was like, I'm just gonna chill here. I like it here. And he actually spent a lot of his prime years there before he ended up moving to the States. So there's something there. There's something there for sure.
I don't think I need to ask the first part of this question, but it says, do you read? Which I can look behind you. You read, but what would be your top 3 books you'd recommend? Like, whether they're influential for you or just 3 books that on top of your mind that you would really recommend to people.
That's a tough one. Well, I mean, yeah, okay. If you, I'll show you. This one will kind of have a tie-in to, so this is
Man-eaters.
Man-eaters. Now, this is actually, and I showed an Indo-Canadian guy this, and he knew where this park was. So this is about a guy, Jim Corbett, who was a big-time game hunter, and then he realized that wasn't for him, and he began to hunt man-eating tigers. Now, I don't want to, butcher the pronunciation of this, but human beings being killed by the Chowgar man-eater. So it goes through all of the villages here. 64 people that this one tiger killed.
Oh, wow.
I've actually heard this story. I've heard about this.
Yeah, and so that the Indo-Canadian guy that I spoke to, he said that there's actually a park or a game park that's named Corbett, which is after this man. So that's probably one of my more interesting reads, because I like, yeah, it was interesting. And then there's many books that I have. So this is a friend of mine. This is Across the Fence, which is about John's on many different social media things. He's a veteran, and he's in the jungle, and the North Vietnamese soldier. It's dark, and he just about steps on him. Right? I mean, it's just like you can feel the
tension. Oh yeah.
Yeah, the tension. So that, yeah, I mean, those kind of books. I like stories of strength, inner strength, pushing through. But if on a sidebar, probably the first Arnold book, the Encyclopedia Bodybuilding, that was like my Bible. So yeah.
I think more people should go back and read that.
Yeah.
I haven't read it yet. If you want, I should read that.
Yeah, like the amount of knowledge that's in there. It's funny. I'll read a study and I'm like, I feel like I read that somewhere, and I'll go to the chapter in the book. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's already, like there are some things that are new. Don't get me wrong. There's some things that are a little bit different. I'd say about 75 to 80% of what we knew to be true just from us training in the gym and just trying on ourselves or reading magazines and stuff like that. Like, I think the biggest changes are just the training aspect of things. Some people realize that, you had the phase in the 90s that Dorian Yates, Mike Menser, Arthur Jones style is the way to go. And then when people started to get injured from doing the heavy duty style, they realized like we need to do a blend of both. And that's kind of what they were doing in the 70s and 80s. They were doing higher volume, but they still had the heavy lifts in there. I think Lee Haney's era was a good time where he was doing volume-based training, but he still had the heavy-duty mixture in there. But yeah, totally.
Who's the most influential person in your life or just in your journey with everything you're doing now?
Probably my father. He's just a very wise guy, and taught me to be look at things, look at problems from all around the problem, and try and be kind of rational, or and to use your intelligence rather than brawn to deal with a problem, right?
No, that's actually crazy you say that. Like, I remember putting my own head when I've talked to you over the years at the gym with my own stuff. You never came at the problem directly. You always came at it with so much different perspective, and I was just like, and like half the time the problem wouldn't even exist. It was like a problem you just created. Maybe half the time it was just emotions, right? And coming with a different perspective is just huge, and that's I feel like that's something that the older generation just was able to teach us. Like now, everyone's just it's so different now, man. How people are dealing with things.
I think also, not everybody from the older generation is able to articulate it and explain it in a way that relates to it.
Like, I mean, I still talk to my dad. He's like, man, we came here and like we had to build a life. You guys are born here. You know, you guys have whatever you have because of us, which is true. And you're just looking back at them. Their life was so simple, so focused that we're so focused on other things now, right? Like you got these things you got to do, like 3-4 vacations a year, dinners every week. They didn't do that stuff. Their life was so simple that problems didn't really happen. The only problems we really had was basic stuff, like from finances to simple, like whatever, right? And they made it work because they knew they had to make it work. And now it's just, it's different. I don't want to get into too much detail with society.
We're gonna have to do a roundtable with Jason, I think, where it'll be a little bit less of an interview style. We'll have you on where it's kind of just shits and giggles and ask some of these questions, because I think just the perspective that you have on specific things. You know how sometimes when you're thinking about a certain thing in your head, you feel like, oh, it's only these two things, and then when we talk to you, it's like, actually, like your initial thought process is actually sometimes different. It's like, oh, there's a 3, 4, 5 kind of ways to look at this thing. And I think that's why this kind of this outlet with a podcast and things like that, super easy. We could just have a chat and be like, what are your thoughts on this? And for us to revamp some of our things, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I've never looked at it that way. That makes a lot of sense. Just to track back when you were talking about some of the things, once you became a father, my brother gave me a book. It's Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And people are saying that no matter what you say, the most important person in your daughter's life is going to be the father. And it's like, they showed studies, they showed examples of the way that the father is and how he conducts himself from day to day to something serious happens in their lives is going to almost like what they're going to grow up into. It's a huge factor. So that's just.
And also, you know, how you treat and you interact with your daughter is eventually what she will feel comfortable in as a partner, right?
Absolutely.
So if you know, I mean, if you're loud and you're aggressive and you're moody or you lash out, that might be normal, you know, in the future. So, you know, it's yeah, it's really you know,
it's funny. It's funny you say that, because there was sometimes, like, I grew up, it was getting yelled at, and what I was doing was basically doing the same thing. That would be my default thing. And my wife had to correct me and say, like, you shouldn't be yelling at her. Like, why are you yelling at her?
Yeah.
Right. It's such a minor thing. And then it changed. Like, sometimes we need those corrections, somebody to tell us, like with Sonny, where his wife said, like, hey, she's in the back. Sometimes we need those corrections. And you know what, man, it kind of, I'm going to let Sonny finish this off, but I'm going to ask one last question at the end of this. So so make sure I get that out.
Your favorite cheat meal or favorite vegetarian meal when you're not on plan? Let's go with your cheat meal first, and then
I think it would have to be pizza, but not your generic pizza. I like the thin crust pizza, you know, the oven, you know.
Thin crust and crispy, man.
Yeah,
yeah. Love the crispiness. If it's not crispy, don't give it. It's not worth it. That's the same thing. That's how I feel about pizza. Like, I'd rather make it at home,
right?
Because I can take it out of the oven fully crispy and it'll be perfect. Or if I'm going to order it, I want to go pick it up, because when it comes in those bags, it doesn't stay crispy. Right?
Moisture builds up.
Or if it comes to the house in one of those bags, I'll put it in the oven. What are your favorite podcasts and why, if you watch any?
Okay, so probably Joe Rogan is up there. I like his kind of his being able to get in there and you know, befriend his guest, you know, and get the best out of them. And then some of the book that I showed you about my friend there, the across the fence, he's done a lot of interviews with his fellow veteran friends. So yeah, that's called Sogcast. So
was that the one that you were recently on?
no, that's he his name is Drew, the guy and he's an author as well, which but that was I think he referred to myself and another guy as the he says a sog dogs or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your Mount Rushmore in life.
I think it would have to be kind of the mental health stuff, you know, and just pushing through and just saying no, I'm not letting this take over my life.
So if you have let's say I think Mount Rushmore has 5 heads on there, right? I think there's 5 people. So right. If you had to put a Mount Rushmore, your Mount Rushmore, who's on there? Like, you know, I talked about like Muhammad Ali and things like that. For you, your personal one, who would you have on there?
I think that you know, Tyson would be up there because I really enjoyed him as a boxer, but more importantly, the man who he is now, and he's able to say, like he realizes that old animal beast is him, but it's not the man that he is today. And I can relate to changes in my own life. Just that, you know, even you saying to me about me wearing camel pants, I kind of cringe now, want to bury my head in my, you know, but yeah, as far as other people, it would be my dad. There've been so many people along the line that was really, you know, have been interesting, you know, but it's people who have overcome and pushed on and dug deep, you know. So
okay, so before I ask my last question, what is the best place for people to get a hold of you? Are there any social media platforms that you're present on, or you know, how, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
They can go onto Facebook. I'm on there, or as far as Instagram, I would have to give you that handle.
Okay, so we'll have that in the description for anybody that wants to reach out to Jason. We'll have that in the description of the YouTube video. This is probably the first one we're going to try to also upload to things like Spotify and some of the other platforms. So far, we've only been on YouTube, but I want to kind of expand that a little bit, because there are a few people that just listen to podcasts. They don't hop on YouTube and listen. Right. Not everybody has YouTube Premium that kind of plays in the background. So we're gonna toss that on to hopefully get it onto Spotify and some of the other platforms there. So I already asked you this question off air. I'm gonna ask you the question on air now. What's it gonna take for you to come back to Optimum?
Well, are those you know, if the 120s are fixed, then
they're the 120s are fixed. The 110s are not.
Okay, yeah.
Let me show the barbells are the same level, man. Put a plate on each side. One feels like it's 3 plates. One feels like it's 1.
Yeah. It's, you know, I agree. You know, maintenance got to be there for sure, but I've tried to train at different gyms. It's always felt like home. And to be honest, I was actually talking to one of my friends about it at the gym. I'm like, I don't really think it's the gym, right? That it's like, it's the atmosphere with the people. And if we took those same, you know, 20 to 30 regulars that are there around the same, you know, 3-4 hour window, and we took them to like a commercial gym, we would just take over, because that's how our personalities are. You're going to have one guy yelling from one side of the gym to the other side of the gym to his buddies, so we know who that is.
Yeah.
We're going to have one guy that's going to be wearing camo pants and work boots. You're going to have one guy that's going to be wearing too many layers, even in the summertime. You know, for me, it used to be the big red sweater. You're going to have one guy that's going to be fashionably late, you know, by 45 minutes. He's on this podcast as well. So you know, you got a mailman, you know, that's, you know, one of the the more fit people at his age. You know, you got a lot of different characters in that place. So it's hard for me to change. You know, I had a time where I trained with Sonny and Langley for a period. I went to a few big box gyms, and you know, it's I think it's the people that make it. It's hard to leave. I think a large amount of the people at that gym would have to leave for me to be like, all right, I'm gonna go elsewhere. You know,
a lot of people have left, haven't they? It's just like you, CAC guys, CAC.
no, me, CAC, you know, Bill. And then there's a new generation, right? So like Sook guys are there, Ams there, you know, Juggy, Dundee,
I'd
we're
come
still
back
there.
if it, but it's just so out of the way now, man.
No, I get no, you know, life happens, right? Scotty's over there because it's closer for him, you know. But it's try to get Yoda back because we used to, you know, we used to laugh a lot about some of the things. We're like, should we go tell that guy to kind of calm down a little bit, you know? And we'd be like, no, let him have his time, right?
So where are you training now?
What's that?
Where are you training now?
Oh, well, I'm training at a purple place.
The greatest gyms. They have an alarm that goes off if you drop the weights.
Which location?
Newton.
Oh, okay.
You know what? I mean, during the whole COVID thing, it was really clean there, and that was important to me. And
I went to Planet Fitness, the one here in Langley, like 5 minutes from my house, and it was cheap. Like I wanted to go there because it's cheap. It had everything there, and I was like, whatever. Like I was trying to save some money. I went one workout, bro, and I was literally told 3 times I can't do half the shit I'm doing. And one of them was having my bag with me. I'm like, fuck off. I want my bag. Yeah. And number two, I grabbed the weights, and apparently they didn't like that I had, I think it was 80 pound or 60, 80 pound dumbbell max.
60.
No, 80s was at
okay.
Club 16.
Right.
Yeah, so this place had 60s. So I had the 60s for like my whole workout. And the lady came up to me, she's like, it's not fair that you're using the 60s and people are feeling really weird because they feel like you're lifting all the strong weights. I'm like, oh. I literally turned around at her and I was like, it's 60-pound dumbbells. Like, what do you want me to do? Right? And she's like, yeah, well, like a few people are feeling very like overwhelmed because you're lifting the heavy weight the whole time. And I just looked at her. I was like, okay. So I finished my workout. Me and my wife finished it. I looked at her. She's like, it's nice in here, but we're not coming back, are we? I was like, nope.
Like, that's why I like these gyms that are kind of the holes in the wall gyms, whether it was Gators, Garage Gym, the OG Optimum Fitness. They're necessary.
Fitness Unlimited gives me the vibes of Opti, but it's just a lot bigger.
Fitness, it's not the same.
It has the same type of dumbbells, everything. Like
no, I understand. It's not a big box style gym. It has its own flair, but there's still certain things you can't do in there that like we were able to do. Like if I were to start squatting barefoot for my whole leg workout, that's a no. It ain't happening. Eventually, somebody's gonna be like, put your shoes on. At Optimum, that was like some people are just walking around barefoot. You know?
Yeah, like those kind of things. Yeah, but I mean, like I've had that happen. I squat with barefoot, like in the Smith rack, and the lady came up to me and said some shit, and I looked at her. I was like, "Listen, go train your fucking people and just."
Jason, thank you very much for all the years that you spent time giving us advice. You know, you probably saved me from a lot of injuries. You also taught us etiquette in the gym. People like yourself are the ones that actually teach the etiquette in the gym. It's not this board on the wall that says you can't do this, you can't do that, you know. So we learned that from you. Thank you for taking the time to share books and literature with us and telling us the stories of your past. We're grown now. You were talking to us like when I was 17, 18 years old to now I'm 34. So, you know, we don't talk a lot anymore, like, you know, on Facebook and stuff like that. But sometimes it's important for you to hear and people to hear that you made a big impact on people's lives. And there are people that are iron addicts and junkies that love the gym. It's a huge chunk of their life. And it's also a valuable time. To others, it might just be working out. For us, it's like much more than that. And if you find people that you can share that space with, that are also willing to like mentor you and spend the time to listen to some of your issues, and also give you tips not only weight training and nutrition but life. I would say you're kind of like a mentor more than anything, not so much just a gym bro or something like that. You helped us out a lot. To this day, like I said, we talk about some of the tips you gave us early on. So just want to give you a thank you. Thank you for all that. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with us. And hopefully we can get you on some of the roundtable episodes as well.
You're welcome.